Walt Grayson is over in his Mississippi Moment Corner and has a little to say about Representative John Lewis. Walt, what's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to try to pass myself off as someone who has had intimate knowledge of the life of Representative Lewis. Unlike most of us, I've learned a whole lot more about him since he died than I ever knew about him when he was alive. But that's not being disrespectful to him. I mean, at least I already knew who he was and a little about his background, unlike the majority of the other 500 or so members of the House of Representatives that I've never even heard of their names. I do know that during the early years of the Civil Rights Movement, he was in Mississippi quite a bit. He was in Parchman for 40 days because of his participation in a freedom ride. But there are lessons to be learned from his life and from the lives of all the other people in the Civil Rights Movement who were jailed or beaten or spit on at lunch counters or murdered. And that lesson is the more the opposition tried to stop the movement, the stronger it became. And in the case of John Lewis, he was nearly beaten to death in Selma, Alabama in 1965. But in less than 20 years after that, he was on the City Council of Atlanta. And then 5 years after that, he was elected to Congress, where he served until he passed away just a few days ago. Now, had John Lewis been a passive supporter of the Civil Rights Movement, we'd have never heard of him. But he had a term that he used, that in order to make progress, sometimes you have to get into a little, as what he called it, a little bit of good trouble, necessary trouble. The kind of trouble you get into when you try to ride up in the front of a bus with the white folks, or grab a sandwich at a whites-only counter, or register to vote if you're not the right color. Good trouble that in the end, and unfathomable to the opposition at the time, ends up being good for everybody. Now, you know, there's a lot of trouble going on in the country today. We got burning and looting and hijacking of blocks of cities and calling them government-free zones. I see that as an entirely different category from John Lewis's good trouble. Good trouble ends up in something good, and ends up with the troublemakers living lives of honor, and ends up making other people glad they were here, and ends up with people missing them when they're gone, like Georgia and the nation will miss John Lewis.